So this is where we get to the next step. We have about like 50 or so minutes left. We want you to get together with a small team and brainstorm about possibly what we could do with the tools that we currently have, right? So one option could be, looking at actually plotting this, geolocating this. The other option would be, what if we take this and using, I don't know, Vuforia, turn this into an AR tabletop option, right? So we want to see if we can come up with, let's say, two concepts for what we could possibly do. And then let's say within a week or so, just try to develop that for an exhibition that we're going to have for Digital Futures. So this workshop is aimed to do kind of an introductory to concepts, but we're curious to hear about your interest and feedback. And we want to see if, with the concepts that we learned in these 2 days, with importing, plotting, real-time data, if we could do two, kind of tangible and small examples that we could also take away from this workshop. So Digital Futures workshops end on June 3rd, but there's a couple of more days for all the workshops to submit samples, and the samples could be a combination of images or short video. So if you guys have any cool ideas, we can brainstorm and then see if we can execute it in the next week or so. And we should have a lot of the bases already with the examples that you have, but we can look at a combination, right? So one idea would be doing like a tabletop AR. Another idea would be, what if, we show multiple cities, compare cities. So NJ's example of showing multiple cities could be interesting. What if we add text to that? So we can look at kind of a variation of what we have. I don't know if you guys want to brainstorm. Should we randomly break into 2 breakout rooms and see what we can do? Any idea? Any comments? All right. So why don't we just do 2 breakout rooms? And maybe NJ, I could be in one and in the other. Should I do a random assignment? All right. All right, let's do that.
I guess since we are small sort of team, so we do not need to break, because I guess.
Okay, yeah, sure. So we can do it.
Yeah, we can communicate between teams.
Or we can even do one project. I don't know, it doesn't matter, but we thought it would be fun to kind of brainstorm and think about like what else could be done, and then what are the challenges there, and then what if we tried this, in the next phase. So any idea? So Paolo, the scaling could be one option. So like plotting to points, that could be one option to look at. Any other ideas? Shinyi, you have, it looks like you have some ideas.
Oh,
we cannot hear you.
The mic has problem, I guess.
Yeah.
We didn't hear the voice. Try again, please. No.
We can hear you. Yufan, how about you? Do you have any ideas? Anything you like to try?
Still considering.
Okay. 1,000? Any idea?
Yeah. And I'm still thinking about the idea.
Okay. So one idea is to turn this into like a tabletop AR. Now, the problem with AR is the fact that, let's say, if we're going with something like Vuforia, the latest version doesn't work with 2021. It's a little bit of it's a bit tricky with compatibility, so we might just need to downgrade a little bit. So that's one option. We can create something, you know, any other ideas? We can turn the balls into a particle cloud, you know, so it can look like more clouds. So that's one option.
Well, I think it's also about probably what kind of data we want to show. For example, if we have a certain area, is there something that we can query and it relates to kind of the space? So it's not just visualizing a piece, but understanding something about the space. I don't know, you know, you mentioned the particle cloud, and, you know, if there's certain areas of the city where there's more pollution or like CO2 are higher, maybe, you know, the particles can grow and occupy space. So there's a relationship between what you represent in data and the spatial occupation that they take. And so it could be like a different way of representing certain data to be more kind of dynamic. But it's also,
What was it? Okay.
sorry, my Zoom is freezing. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I was just my screen is frozen. But anyway, it's more, I guess, that is the resolution of data, because if we can just get one parameter for one whole city, like a big chunk of the city, then that we can represent, I think, unless that, you know, we jump to a scale of, like, you know, the world is the previous example. In that case, you know, you have different probes to show data.
Yeah, the world example would be interesting, because then we're able to, have you guys seen this NASA visualization of CO2? It's been kind of one of the most fundamental breakthroughs in environmental science. Let me share that with you. In the past 20 years. So I'm gonna share this with everybody. So there's been, I would say, two major breakthroughs in environmental sciences in terms of visualization. So one was this, which was a graph by a scientist called Keeling that since late 1950s, he was plotting CO2. And you know, you're able to kind of see the variation. And the second one has been this NASA visualization. So the NASA visualization, every few years they do a version of this, and it's quite daunting when you see it in motion, because in a sense, like, you see kind of how these particles are interacting. Like, obviously this is using sophisticated fluid dynamics, which is something that in Unity it's just not there to do fluid dynamic simulation. But possibly we could create this globe with, instead, you know, instead of these balls, they could be, you know, particle clouds that are maybe changing color or changing scale. So that would be one way to kind of create a wraparound version of this. How do you guys feel about that? And the globe that NJ had, it has this beautiful wrapping, but also, you know, we can find an asset, which is more of a texture of the globe. I have a really good surface texture of the world with some bumps and valleys. So there's ways that we can make this more appealing. So we can pretty much take that example and we can then wrap it, in a more volumetric way. And then we could use the same method, which is wrapping for that.
If I want to do something dynamic like this video, how can I?
So one way would,
with data.
So I'm going to show you guys an example, and maybe we could do a version of this. So this was a project for City of Seoul, and this is an augmented reality, and this is what you saw in the
demo video for
demo video. Yes, thank you. And basically, this is using Vuforia, a very large target for augmented reality, and this is using polygon boundaries, and inside each polygon boundary, there's a particle cloud. So particles are one of the generic types that come in Unity. So if you go to game objects, and particle type is one of them. They're not the most, you're not able to do sophisticated fluid dynamics. They just don't have it's not robust enough. There's a lot of packages that allow you to, so this is kind of similar to what we have, right? A high resolution map. So in this case, it's just using height, similar to what NJ was showing with the depth. And we can have, let's say over New York or over another city, we can have these pollution clouds that are being constructed, right? And again, this is using that Vuforia option. So I guess maybe a decision as a team, we can maybe agree on whether we want to work in global scale. So we can have the same example, we can have a rotating globe and then cities with this pollution, maybe clouds that are over them. So then the same color that's determining the scale, it could determine the particle clouds. Versus we can work with something more planar and look at maybe more of a planar example. Or if you have any other idea, let us know. Because one thing that's really important for us is to just kind of communicate that when it comes down to the technology, it's quite, there's only like so many file types that you can have. There's only so many, it's pretty much the combination of the same thing, right? But it's more about kind of the how you use this information and what is the story that you're trying to tell that makes the visualization unique to the experience. Yeah, go ahead, please. Sorry, we cannot hear you. I don't know if you can connect your mic. Sorry, I cannot hear you. Do you want to? Can you try this? Can you go to Discord and see if I can hear you there? I don't know if it's like a Zoom issue or. So maybe one thing you could do is if you go to Discord and if you go to Lounge, I can try to see if I can hear you there. Or if you want to type. Yeah, sorry, I cannot hear you. So, is it possible? Okay, yeah, there we go. Hi, it doesn't work. Do you wanna, can you try it on Discord? If you go to Discord, like try it here. Go to our Discord, then go to Lounge, and I might be able to hear you. Or type. Yeah, can you hear me? Hold on. So you are muted, so unmute. So just, okay, so maybe until he unmutes, just unmute, you're muted. All right, you found any idea? I think I saw you like doing really cool stuff on USC campus, you know, walking around. Like, is there anything that you want to bring in?
Thinking on a larger urban scale is quite challenging for me because personally I'm almost doing things on like local sensors and something like AR core, AR kit like that. So
So do you
urban
want to,
scale,
like, so what if, it doesn't have to be urban, right? The urban is just the, you know, because of the resolution of the data. So it could certainly be that, but, you know, like, basically, if you're working at USC, let's say, right, your sensor is going to be, if you, what your phone is connecting, let's say if you're looking for weather data for, you know, from your phone, what your phone is looking at is this. So your phone, yeah, sure, there's like internal heat sensors, but it's not what it's reporting in your weather app, right? Your weather app is connecting to this one, and that's it. So that's kind of your understanding of what the weather is. So you could still, you know, do local visualizations, perhaps based on that, right? So for instance, like I've seen you like do flowers and things, you know, like can you maybe think about like a variable, an asset that is changing based on the weather, right? So I don't know, like flowers in Santa Monica might be different than flowers in Los Angeles than in Burbank, right?
oh, so like retrieving GPS data and the weather data to modify your local geometry.
Yeah, right. So that's kind of the idea. So for instance, if you look at, because I've seen you like do things in AR like on campus and on, I don't know, like.
Or maybe it turns out to be something like, you know, the Google Map has an AR navigation function, something like that. So maybe overlaying something.
So navigation is, it's, okay, so the navigation.
Like you look towards a direction and it shows spots and temperature at a distance.
Right. So that's something that, right. So that works but only if you have the right data. I'm going to just quickly share with you. I've done this on USC campus where, so these are a bunch of sensor boxes that we've set up on campus. So I'm going to just zoom out. So these are a bunch of sensor boxes at USC. And in this case, the phone is basically getting your gyro, and it tells you where to go based on that navigation, and it guides you towards a sensor box. But the problem is that in this case, you know, for everybody to kind of engage with this, because this, you need to be there physically, right? This is going to require participation. So, I mean, it doesn't really, it wouldn't really work as a group activity unless we're physically in a person, in a place. But one thing you could do is, you know, think about like, now I'm in this city or that city, and then I don't know, like something about that, like how is it changing? If you guys don't have a specific idea, maybe we could do the globe idea. Kind of take the globe idea and create variations of that based on maybe having multiple cities and then their pollution. So that might be an interesting variation. All right, no feedback. So there was a comment about doing something for COVID. Could we do something in street scale related to COVID-19 influence? And something like that. Sure, but how would we connect environmental data to this? Since kind of this workshop is focusing on weather data and environmental data. One thing we could do actually, that might be interesting, after COVID-19 happened, a lot of cities, because there were no cars traveling, pollution dropped, right? So maybe if we find the right data, we're just looking at, I don't know, like pollution before COVID and pollution after COVID, or, you know, that might be one thing that we can compare. So it's the same city, but then we look at pre-COVID and post-COVID difference. That could be interesting. So for that, we need to find the right data. Otherwise, yeah.
I just got an idea.
Go for it.
Like something about the idea would be like global warming and the sea rises, and you, like we are doing a filter on the phone, and on the phone there are different weather data, and you get the weather data, like you categorize it. If it's raining, and there should be, like, you in the virtual environment, you are placing a sea level really high above, and the whole city looks like underwater, and there are some raindrops. And when it's sunny, and there are some, you know,
so
other effects.
Water level is one of the parameters that's already part of this. So if you go here, there's sea level. So that's a parameter that we can easily print, and that could be associated with the height. So maybe one thing that could be cool is if, let's say for New York, because it's one of the cities, or for Shanghai, or for Miami is going to go underwater very soon. This value, right, could be basically height of a transformation of a block. Because if you think about it, water level is ultimately a plane, right? You have a plane that's going up and down. So when you're doing water level simulation, there's a really great website called Eyes on the Rise. It's called Eyes on the Rise. I'll share this with everybody. And this one is using, so let me just make a new channel called examples. And so this one is using a topographic data. So if you go to here to the sea level tool, and it's basically just using and you're able to just simulate water level rise. I don't know. That's a bummer. So this should give me the, basically it gives me a level rise, right? Sorry, this should work, but there was this really great visualization with Unreal, which I don't know if you guys have seen this. This was in the news a couple of years ago, where you had this this one. Have you guys seen this?
No.
So I think it's one of the most powerful visualization examples. I'll share it with you. So she's standing here. Obviously, this is a green screen in the back, in a cave style, and she's talking about this environment, and then water level is coming up, right? So it's like one of the most powerful visualizations, I think, up to this date. So water level is something that we could show because it's pretty much a plane, right? That we can just elevate over the city. Yeah, so this is a great example of water level rise. And that's pretty much how they calculate. Like if you look at NOAA maps, or if you look at any other water simulation, is always a cut in Z. So I highly recommend checking this out. So we can just use that parameter to pretty much just elevate a box or a plane with some texture over the city, right?
Just scroll down.
I'm sorry?
Could you just scroll down the Shisha file?
Yeah, it's here, the sea level.
We have the temperature minimum and maximum value, which is the and the actual temperature. You guys can play with the numbers. And also, I'm not sure about the something related to COVID-19, but one thing we can use we have parameter actually a little more down. Yeah, just scroll down, please. Down there, yeah, more, because I want to see something on the comment.
Oh yeah, sure.
So these are data we can access. So as you can see here, we have wind section, right? 9,138 wind. So we have a wind direction as a degree and speed. So I'm not sure how we make some connection between this wind data with the COVID-19, but you can make some your own sort of hypothesis. Like, for example, some isolate or some coast area has a more possibility to contaminate this disease to other people, right? And it compared to the open space, for example. So I mean the resolution of the data could be not enough to apply that kind of strategy on the street, but yeah, I'm just thinking as a brainstorming purpose. So we have a wind data, so what we can do with that data. So you guys can make some idea. Maybe sometimes we don't need to make the data directly. So we could process the data that we want based on what we have. So data could be processed by your sort of hypothesis, I guess.
What about apply the amplitude of the wind to the vertex offset of this mesh? Like they're waving towards a direction and there is noise, like they're, yeah, in the wind, literally.
Yeah, just some thinking. Like I'm just saying, as Viana mentioned in his lecture in the presentation, so the data is actually couldn't represent something in the urban context, because that is the data from the very ideal place. Yeah, so I think we can add more parameter, like I mean, even if we know the wind direction is vectors, so the wind gonna be a little bit different in the Wall Street, for example, and then some rural area, right? So we can consider some direction of the street and then the alignment of a building, So I think we need more other additional information or some assumption that is sort of hypothesis to guide your project, I guess.
Yeah, either, we have to go like very like fantastical, there's this like the kind of the globe idea, right? You have this like pollution clouds and it's very exaggerated. It's just trying to tell you like, oh my God, pay attention. Or so kind of the NASA one, right? It's very like, it's very much in your face. Or like if we want to go for more of a like a simulation one, yeah, Unity is still like, well, this is not a Unity issue. This is more of an environmental simulation issue. There's very, very few softwares like OpenFOAM is one of the ones that's like accurate when it comes to like simulating fluid dynamics and stuff. But pretty much most things that architects work with or just the general public, like these are lacking not only, let's say, data for simulation, but also it's still quite choppy, right? Especially when it comes to like urban scale. So, but that's a really important for us, and we're emphasizing this because this is kind of reality of like, these are different parts, right? The database issue remains, whether you're working with, the GAN workshops that are trying to make their own database, there's a lack of proper data, right? Whether we're working with environmental data, there's lack of proper data. So the database issue remains. Now, assuming you have the right data, then what are you trying to communicate and who's the audience? That's another issue.
And
yeah.
A sec. So this is one of my research.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Are you sharing?
Yeah, I'm sharing. Okay, so you guys can see my screen, right?
No, I think I need to stop sharing. Go ahead.
Yeah, so you can see my screen, right? Okay, so this is one of my sort of research. In that research, there's multiple sort of purpose that I want to achieve. So one thing is to make some sort of mimic the complex system. So when I say complex system, it's more about like making some chain effect system. So for example, like we have the sun. So actually, you know what? So we have the data in the here, right? So we are able to actually without this data, we are able to know the time on the city, right? And then you can bind this time with the sun so that we can automatically create some other like environment factor with the shade. So I think this is one factor that I can say to you guys. And also, anyhow, this project is based on this kind of system, so that I can make a sort of pipeline, So cloud can create the wind drop, right? Sorry, the raindrop, right? And the raindrop can be consumed by the tree, right? And then tree can grow with the enough water, right? And then they can populate some their own neighbor. And also, if you pull the sort of tree from the ground, that become timber, right? And then you can drag the timber to the factory, so you can have more resources. But as opposed to you're gonna have like some bad thing for your environment, increasing the carbon dioxide. So once the carbon dioxide is they reach a certain amount of the level, and then maybe sea rise can be happened, right? It makes sense. Just make a small. We can just abstract the complex world into very particular, like a discrete process. And also the other disaster is that once you pull the tree enough, then the air. I'm sorry. This is the air pollution gonna be, increased, right? Then also it affects the tree growth. It's like a chain effect, like a positive chain effect or negative chain effects. So basically, the idea behind the scene is that how people interact with the this procedure, and also they need to deal with the sort of angry nature if they do something wrong, right? So these are sort of like how we basically created the other the data out of some hypothesis and the existing data. So this is, I think, one thing I can drop on the table as a brainstorming purpose. And again, just like that, we have the Unity has a nice selection, so we can actually apply. When you search the name of city, then we can parse the actual, the time to apply to reposition the sun in your scene. Yeah, this is also possible. You can apply.
The other option is to think about this more as more of kind of what is the data, what is the story we're trying to tell. So what NJ is saying is kind of relying on more a little bit like what the game block code was doing, or with NJ's example, you're creating kind of this chain reaction. The other option is if we just say, let's say, this is for instance, there's been a lot of fires in the past year in Australia, in California, yeah, all over the world. So, but also, what if we look at, I don't know, relationship of fire increase and asthma, right? So we can just say like, here's this, and then here's that, right? So we can do something like that. I think if we could agree on maybe one story, then we could, start to begin to create something together in the next week. And I think it could be a good walk away. And if you, because you can contribute to it as much as you want, but ideally we quite enjoy maybe the process of building something together from your inputs, because what is actually really missing as part of this is what is it that we're trying to convey, and then what are the tools necessary for that? Because otherwise, sure, we can do this, we can do that, but why we're doing it, and yeah, so what's the story that we're trying to tell? So with COVID, the relationship could be about like pre and post, right?
Yeah, I mean, basically, I just wanted to leave one comment more. I mean, the most important thing for the data visualization is that I think we need to, expose to the process as much as possible, which is about like parse the string data and then into convert string data to some vector data or some color data to your Unity scene. So what I'm saying is that we have the basic tutorial for the parsing the CSV file, either local or from your web. So I think on top of the real-time data, also you guys can download some data that potentially indirectly support this weather data. by searching some local government or some organization that they collect like some urban scale or like a district scale the environmental data there, so that you can import this data as a file, right? And then at the same time, we have the other pipeline to fetch the real-time data or an open weather API, and then we can combine and then see what is the correlationship or like what is the some, you guys can actually produce your own sort of data out of these two little different data. Yeah. So, I mean, basically this is sort of a thinking process, like make some hypothesis. Okay, so weather data could have some something to do with something, or like it's gonna be affect, it's gonna have some relationship, or it has some you're gonna affect like some particular factor. So you can make some hypothesis, because I guess you guys, all of you guys designers, right? So just encapsulate your thought process as some like a procedural code. Yeah, so I think this is also really important practice for the computation design, just data visualization, because data visualization is one of the way to understand the some of the insight from the data, right? But ultimately, I guess we are designers, we need to cook the insight, right, as a form of policy or as a form of like geometry or architectural landscape. So we can expand the thought process a little bit further. So my conclusion is you can revisit the CSV5 example. So you can looking for the other environmental data on top of the weather API. Yeah.
One thing we could do, maybe if you want some time to think, one thing I could do just to, we could put together maybe 3 options in terms of like what is kind of reasonable in terms of what we could do as a team in the next week, kind of combining the examples together. And let us like, I'm going to brainstorm with NJ, and then we'll put like 3 examples up for vote. And then, if you want to participate, that would be great. Otherwise, it's fine. We'll share it with you, the results. But the idea would be just to kind of walk away with one example that's trying to put these concepts together. Does that sound reasonable? We'll put it up for vote.
Well, if you guys have your own sort of particular tasks along with your PhD or master thesis or whatever things, then please go for it. Yeah, so we're gonna help you guys. But otherwise, if you feel like lost, then yeah, I mean, just make a team, to help each other and make some brainstorming. So I think every possible direction could be open to us. So please let us, please make your own voice on the Discord, please.
Yeah. Sorry, I just had maybe a few thoughts on the previous segment about the sea level rising, and I thought that maybe if you work with different tiles that some of us have collected, we could basically compare what will be the effect in different cities around the world, and maybe we could get the data for the sea level and how it would change, maybe with some prediction in the next 10, 50 years, but also use the tile itself to generate data. So for example, I think from an urban point of view, it would be useful to understand we have a tile and we have a X amount of public space, which are just extracted from the mesh. Could be just understanding which faces of the mesh maybe are horizontal and a certain Z height to kind of isolate what's the public space. And then you can see if the sea level rises, then how much of the public space gets basically taken by the water. And then what's the effect on how the city works? Or in a sudden, a part like, I don't know, 30% of your public space gets taken off usage of the inhabitants. So, it could be that you can find some sort of representation of also the effect on how the city works.
I like the idea of comparing. So like actually in the same view, you're able to see multiple. And I think the globe idea or using the tile idea allows us to do that. I think it could be quite powerful, right? Because with sea level rise, NOAA has a projection for 50 years, which are pretty much like, it's kind of the same projection, and the rate is slightly different, but definitely that's something we could do. And maybe that could be a slider, but you know, you can move. But the idea of comparison and the fact that like there's us in different like locations, and also like if you're in a city, you care about like I teach in Miami, and I know that that city is not going to be there in 30-40 years. So it's kind of like when you live in a place, it becomes very local. So perhaps we could do that.
Yeah, I have one more thought. So basically, what's my Unity? Okay. Okay, let me open my Unity. Meantime, yeah, also we have this capability to extract data from image, you know, just like that. So, so image, as I mentioned, it's like two-dimensional data set, right? It has like also the other 4 channels like RGB and alpha, right? So Polo is actually reminding me of that, like, you know, as a some of like very easy sort of remote sensing, right? So we can see like the green space could be like some open space or some tree, or which is more environmental friendly infrastructure on the urban context, right? So in this context, right, we have example, I think data, right? So image here, input image. In this example, I just use the RGB colors, flatten them as a grayscale to use the elevation of the land. Here, right? So, but I mean, this is the black and white image, right? But what if we use this some just Google Map with this, I mean, satellite image, for example, yeah? So in that case, we could like parse some particular sort of color, not this the grayscale, just we can get the color value, right? So you can the return value, okay, over and return value is color, right? So then we can get this color just like that, and then you can make some statement if the green value is bigger than particular level. For example, we want to select that area, right? And then we increase the sea level a little bit more, and then check the color value, and a little bit more and check the color value, right? So that maybe we can draw some sort of the graph, like so that we are able to, you know, I mean, we can inspect the green value after 1 meter increase of the sea level, for example. And then we can also, along the x-axis and then along the y-axis, then we can make some area of the green space, for example, so that we are able to draw some like a graph. It's gonna be not like a linear graph. It has more about like our indicating some nice curve to give us some insight, you know. You guys, what I'm saying, right? Yeah, so just draw, I mean, also to draw 2D graph is also very important visualization to understand the data. So
can I just quickly share something?
yeah, yes, please.
So just one thing. Just scroll up. So there is so typically when you're plotting, like this is a typical, you know, MATLAB plot, but once you start to spatialize it, right, you start to exaggerate it. Once you're starting to place it over a map, right, it's starting to have a slightly different kind of feeling to it. At the same time, there's this statistician called John Tukey that he came up with this method called exploratory data analysis, or EDA, when he kind of talks about how when you have data that's maybe not sorted, if you don't make a hypothesis before we look at it, it could start to suggest new patterns and new way of looking at information. So what NJ is mentioning, you know, although we can think about a typical like a 2-dimensional plot or a 3-dimensional plot, but by tweaking the information, you know, focusing on different aspects, so then you can start to you know, rethink that. So you know, just like a typical MATLAB plot, but you start to exaggerate it, you're starting to show a little bit more of the variables. So I think at this point, the sea level rise seems like a good option. I'm gonna stop sharing. If it's okay with you guys, let us brainstorm a little bit, and then we're just gonna post something in Discord in a couple of hours, just in terms of like some options that we could do. And then it would be great if you could just keep the conversation going, right? NJ will be quite busy this week, but I can meet if you want to discuss this. And the idea is that we're just gonna brainstorm and collaboratively create something in the next week or so. And I understand if you're busy, you know, if it's difficult to participate, but this is something that we just want to, you know, get as much as you have time or interest, you know, get input. Right? Well, thank you. This was fun. So it was short, but we're hoping that, you know, we were able to communicate our interest in not only visualization part, but the issue of lack of resolution and kind of how do you take conventional workflows and maybe start to question things. And you know, the Discord is there for us to continue the conversation. And I hope that you know, if you're interested, in a week, we'll have something that kind of wraps up our ideas, and we can decide what to do. If there's interest, perhaps we could meet once we have the example, discuss it, or we can have work sessions, but I'm going to leave this up to an organic, you know, emergence that Discord allows. But we're hoping to create a little community and keep in touch with us.
Thank you very much. That was really fun.
Thank you. And the other thing is there's obviously more workshops for Digital Futures. There's more talks over the week, you know, so right now, like, you have time to watch other live streamings, and we're gonna also, NJ gracefully, he chopped the video, so this video would also be available. Check out his YouTube. He always posts tutorials, so just keep in touch.
Thank you so much. It was...
Alrighty, everyone.
Okay.
Have a good day. All right.
Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Bye. Bye.